Good evening. The news gang is here tonight. No more gloves, bare knuckles, empty threats, and some garbage. Who will have the last laugh? Coming out, the president's gauntlet and the deputy's bombshell. Battle lines drawn over Raila's candidature. We talk about projects, prospects, and protests. Also on the show tonight, return of the party, the rise, fall, and what next for president's party. Plus, the numbers are out, but what's in a number? August 9th is beckoning. On the kicker tonight is a referee ready. Spotlight on anniversary towers. Yvonne takes on the garbage of the campaign trail, a chronic shortage of good manners. Harambee Stars, oh Harambee Stars, where are you? The punchline asks. And on the angle tonight, a cry for the beloved women of Kenya.
Wewe ambao unataka kuishi kuongea siasa mchana mpaka usiku, na wakati nilisema hivyo nikasema jameni, kwa heshima kwanza tufanye kazi, tutarudi wakati wa siasa ukifika. Nikaambiwa wewe huna uwezo wa kutuambia tuache. Nikasema sasa hii mambo ya kutangatanga, akasema wacha sisi tutangatange. Nikasema basi wala kama hivyo ndivyo umeona ndio inakutosheleza, endeleeni. Sisi na wale tumebaki tufanye kipindi cha siasa sikifika, tutakuja tuseme na yetu sisi. Sasa kipindi ya siasa imekuja na mtatusikia.
Hey wala. And that's where we'll begin, but the fifth gangster tonight is Wilson Mushora. He's helping us with the sign language interpretation, and Jamila is still away tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, they say the gloves are off. The president coming out in a fashion, Linus, that we haven't seen before. I mean, he's been skirting around this subject, occasionally throwing some barbs at his deputy. But what we saw in Mombasa at a function that was totally unrelated to the goings-on in the current politics, at least that's what we thought until this happened, the president basically goes all out and, you know, in a sense trying to begin to lay a case against his deputy and those who work with him, essentially saying, hey, this is why I have a problem with this guy.
This is nothing either side of the political divide should be proud of. This is very, very sad indeed, in as far as the intentions of Chapter 9 of the Constitution are concerned. Because this is the first pair, Uhuru Kenyatta, President, and William Ruto, Deputy President, the first pair under the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to hold office in an arrangement that seemed to bring some stability at the presidency, having been informed by previous events around those two offices. Because in the past, and we've discussed this many times, in the past, the vice presidents, before the Constitution of Kenya 2010 came to force, were picked and dismissed at the pleasure of the president. That changed, and something was done with the Constitution to try and bring some stability. And in that, the new shared ticket was brought, where you have a president who then picks a running mate who becomes deputy president if that particular candidate wins the election. Now, the Constitution didn't proceed to give more instructions on how these two should conduct themselves. The Constitution certainly doesn't raise issues about manners and personality differences and things like that. It doesn't prescribe how then this should be carried forth. And what we are seeing here is a massive failure on the part of President Uhuru Kenyatta and the part of William Ruto in as far as respecting how the Constitution intended them to be. Because in a very sad way, we are falling in the same space as South Sudan, where Riek Machar, the vice president, has been in constant wars with the President Salva Kiir. We are in the same space where Nigeria was when President Olusegun Obasanjo and his deputy Atiku Abubakar could not see eye to eye.
In fact, it's quite strikingly similar, actually, to what we have right now.
Very, very similar. And we're in the same space as Jerry Rawlings and his vice president, Accra. He actually beat him up at some point.
Yes, he did.
And we hope this doesn't come anywhere close to that.
And I think we can listen to the deputy, because it almost appeared like it was coming to that. There's a place where he is essentially taking a claim in the successes of Jubilee, saying that he cannot be left out. I think he spoke very strongly about that.
The Jubilee government was a joint project between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. And I want to tell them, you cannot deny me as deputy president the credit we have achieved in the many things we have achieved as a government. Kama singekuweko serikali ya Jubilee haingetengenezwa. Anybody imagining that they can deny me the credit for the things we did that succeeded in Jubilee are wasting their time. I made an equal contribution to the success of the Jubilee administration.
Wow, Linus, that is where we are.
That's where we are, and look at that. Kama singekuweko serikali ya Jubilee haingekuweko. Now, we said we borrowed this constitution, some elements of it from progressive democracies like the US, and we've watched many elections and many governments in the US, and this is not the relationship between the vice president and the president. Here is one fact that must be stated about the Uhuru-Ruto relationship. The Uhuru-Ruto relationship has been one of competition, and you can tell even from the words of and body language of the deputy president, kama singekuweko.
Equal contribution.
Equal contribution, meaning them equal power. I mean, there are those who have insinuated an arrangement where this has been an attempt to have a co-presidency. It comes close to that, and it doesn't work that way. There's only one boss at a time. Whatever contribution you make as a deputy president, you must remain deputy president, and the president remains president. And even in the way you conduct yourself, and you saw in the first soundbite there, President Uhuru Kenyatta stating what his case has been. And he has consistently done this by saying, I told them they are campaigning too early. Wanatanga-tanga. And you remember how the tanga-tanga tag started. Chronologically, that's where the problem started, where somehow the deputy president started matching up with the president in a way that then creates this kind of friction.
But Francis, this is, for many people, this is not totally unexpected. I mean, there was always going to be a moment when the things will come to a head. I mean, we've seen hints here and there. We've seen subtle jibes at each other. But as it is now, this is all out, war as it were. The president essentially out there saying, I will come to the people, I will come and explain to them what my desires are, sort of saying, you know, wakinisikiza ni sawa, and the deputy out there saying, no, you cannot cut me out of all of this. Interesting how he says the things that succeeded. That's another story. But are you surprised that things have taken this turn 6 months to the election?
Absolutely not. Actually, any keen observer of what was happening in the political scene would have seen this all along. And the easiest way to tell it was right from, even before the handshake, even before the end of the first term, you could tell some friction, though it wasn't being brought out prominently, but there was. And if you talk to people who understood what was happening in the first term, 2013 to 2017, they will tell you there was serious friction, only that it was masked for purposes of, you know, showing that the Jubilee team was still united, even though in-house there was a lot of infighting. And you could tell it. And I would think the friction began way earlier, even the naming of the cabinet at that point. You remember the stakeouts at State House when we were waiting for the cabinet to be named? So it could tell you that this was a coalition government right from the onset. Even the pairing, even the the crafting of the message, you would see it was a total coalition from the onset. Though we were told it is one united government, but you could see clearly that there were two sides, two competing parts of the coalition, but inside one team. And so matters came to a head after that, when we got into the second term. And you could clearly tell that something was going to be seriously amiss. Silently, you would hear mamas, some of the deputy president's allies complaining about the treatment from the president. Some of the allies of the president, you would hear them say they're not very comfortable with how the deputy president has been crafting how the government looks like. More of a shared presidency, as Lina says, the Uhuruto tag, looking like a shared presidency. And so matters came to a head properly when the handshake was done in March 2018. And right from that point, you would hear the deputy president and his allies would bash Raila Odinga, the ODM leader, who is a core handshake partner of President Uhuru Kenyatta, but say very little about the president. I mean, these were two hands, the president's and Raila Odinga's. So if you bash the ODM leader, so what are you saying about the president? Because he is the other hand in that handshake. So those are the telltale signs that you could clearly see. The president has been dropping hints here and there about what is happening in the government, what could have happened in the government. And strategically, you've not seen the deputy president respond to the president directly. Even in instances where the president has been thoroughly bashed by members of parliament, and particularly from the Mount Kenya region, the deputy president has not attacked the president directly. But quite a number of those heavy things have been said in his presence. And so any keen observer will tell that there was a problem, only that it was waiting for an opportunity like now, when it's an all-out combat where probably the argument is there's nothing to lose, so to say. So in fact, go for it.
There was a direct, another direct response where the president, I think we can have that soundbite, where the president talks about kazi haifanywi kwa gari, and the deputy president actually has a very direct response. How things are arranged in the bedroom, alafu sasa ndio unaenda juu ya gari.
Let's listen.
Lakini nawasikia huko hakuna kazi inafanywa, hakuna, wakiongea juu ya magari ni matusi, hakuna kazi na sasa. Jameni, mimi nataka niwaambie hata chama hiyo ya rais ilikufa. Mimi niliomba kura ya Wakenya, si ndio? Nikiwa na mambo mawili, kuleta amani na kufanya ile kazi na kutimiza ahadi ambazo nilipatia wananchi, kama hii ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba watu wako na afya bora.
And I know too well, I have been in politics long enough that you plan theory in offices, but you execute practicals in the field, sometimes on top of cars. So hakuna haja ya kusumbuana.
Hakuna haja ya kusumbuana. Nani na nani wanasumbuana. So it was going to get to this point, and tell you what, Joe, it will get worse by the day.
Sadly, when we're talking about, and both you and Linus have mentioned how there was inklings of this even before the 2017 election. Anybody remember the promise by David Morade about the sort of different presidency we would have after the 2017 election? He, said not once, not twice that we would see a very different Uhuru Kenyatta as president should he win, in 2017. And you start to wonder if that was not, just sort of a sign that there were things that were happening differently. He even said something about him being a benevolent dictator, and perhaps, seemingly now taking charge on a very, on a much bigger level compared to what we'd had of what we're all calling around this table a shared presidency. Decisions were made together. They had matching ties. Now we're being told about a different president. And I guess that's where you start to see, what was happening between the two. And then, of course, the handshake happened. But it's clear to see that there had been issues years before. And what is interesting is now, you know, like we said, we will definitely see more of this. It's 6 months to the election. There's the Jubilee, NDC coming out. And in fact, like we said, that we will see more of this. Let's listen to that. The president actually promising more of this, where he talks about the political season being here. Na mutatusikia.
Wewe ambao unataka kuishi kuongea siasa mchana mpaka usiku. Na wakati nilisema hivyo nikasema, jameni, kwa heshima, kwanza tufanye kazi, tutarudi wakati wa siasa ukifika. Nikaambiwa wewe huna uwezo wa kutuambia tuache. Nikasema sasa hii mambo ya kutangatanga, akasema wacha sisi tutangatange. Nikasema basi wala kama hivyo ndivyo umeona ndio inakutosheleza, endeleeni. Sisi na wale tumebaki tufanye kipindi cha siasa sikifika, tutakuja tuseme na yetu sisi. Sasa kipindi ya siasa imekuja na mtatusikia.
I think that's promise enough of what's to come.
Yeah.
And it does speak to what we are hearing about the president perhaps finally explaining, you know, to his supporters what really happened, you know, why he's chosen to support Raila Odinga, whom he was bitterly against, you know, for a very long time. But yes, definitely, harder times ahead.
Very interesting, because you see the president, if there was any doubt whatsoever that the president was going to be deeply involved in attempting to shape his succession,
this is it.
This should really clear those doubts. As they would say, tonight is your answer. Basically, the president is signaling that he is going to be an active player. And that could happen for many reasons. I mean, when presidents are leaving, typically you would expect them to be laid back and that sort of things. But usually that happens when they're comfortable with, you know, who's going to take over, who could take over, and that sort of thing. But here's a situation where the president has been at loggerheads, basically, for the last, you would say, 4 years with his deputy. And so he has signaled in no uncertain terms that he does not prefer his deputy to take over, probably whether he thinks about his legacy or what happens to him after that. There are all manner of considerations there, but the bottom line of all of this is that President Kenyatta is signaling that he is going to take some role of a significant nature in his own succession. But on the other side, there is also the deputy president, who has got to a point where he's saying, the gloves are off. There's no longer any need for me to couch all of these things in all those sweet nothings, as some people say, that, you know, he's been saying, oh, you know, things were good until Raila Odinga came around. So he'll be saying, no, they decided to go with BBI, reggae, handshake, and all of those things. But he's never attacked the president that directly. But now he's saying he doesn't, perhaps he doesn't think that there is a political cost to it. Of course, the jury is still out on what the impact of that is going to be. But I think the deputy president is making it absolutely clear that now everybody, including the president, on the other side is fair game. So the narrative that they're pushing is that the president basically has created a project in the name of Raila Odinga that he is using to perpetuate his reign.
Yeah.
Or
Succeed himself. That is the accusation.
Himself in a way, so that he continues to do what he's doing now. The deputy basically, Ruto has been saying this everywhere he goes, that wanataka kutupanga na waendelee kufanya vile wamekuwa kifanya. Very, very interesting choice of words, considering that he is in this place where he has to decide which things in the Jubilee administration to be associated with and which things to distance himself from. Linus.
Yes, and Joe, it's not surprising that it has come to this. The open and direct exchange between the president and the deputy president will only mean that they'll now also move to the next phase, which is square it out politically. And presidents and politicians do this. I know there have been all these questions and the accusation that why is he trying to interfere with succession? President Uhuru Kenyatta himself is a product of presidential interference in succession. When President Moi actually brought him from what was really a non-political background completely, all the way to becoming a presidential candidate for KANU in 2002. So presidents, by nature, it's human nature, have an interest in who's...
And he owes a lot to that period, even if he didn't win, isn't it?
He does. I mean, that's the beginning. It gave him a very, very strong start, finishing second, having lost all your previous elections, which was one to
Moses Mohia in
Gatundu South. Presidents have an interest in who becomes the next, who replaces them. And I always remember the story of Julius Nyerere. He was in retirement, 10 years into retirement in 1995, when the opposition NCCR Mageuzi of Augustine Mrema was really on the verge of winning, or it looked very, very strong. It was basically going to sweep CCM out of power. And I remember what President Nyerere, retired President Nyerere, said those days is, siwezi kwenda Butiama, that's his home, na kuacha nchi itwaliwe na mbwa. He used very strong language. But it is illustrative there that this is what he felt, that the leadership of the country is going to be in so wrong the hands that he can compare it to dogs. And this is what presidents do. They also say, I have to try and make sure it doesn't go in the direction that he feels is not right. And just to add on what this will mean, this exchange with the Deputy President, William Ruto versus Uhuru Kenyatta, will now, the President has suddenly found himself as a victim rather than the villain he has been for so long. Remember, Deputy President William Ruto has made a lot of inroads in central Kenya, and that must be admitted. From 2013 all the way to presently, he could claim that he's built quite a base there. And he has built part of that by painting himself as a victim that has been sidelined by President Kenyatta, a victim of the handshake. I'm the good guy, I've done nothing wrong. It is him that
and he
went.
Promised me.
He promised me. Yes. But then now, here is an exchange, and you can tell from the language of the DP that he's as equally aggressive as the president is towards him. So it's a real dirty linen event. I mean, Joe, there is always a saying that, you know, a lot of things that are said in divorce courts. And I think we are witnessing, I won't say what these guys are actually saying in divorce court terms.
Public divorce proceedings. The easiest way to also tell how this was going to look like, you remember that interview the Deputy President did, and he said that he will never allow his deputy to be mistreated the way he has been mistreated. Yep. Actually sounded more like persecuted. Now, it was not so much about what he said, but so much about what he didn't say. So if he was being persecuted or mistreated, and he would not allow his deputy to be mistreated, so was he saying that the president had allowed the mistreatment of his deputy? Well, that is a fundamental question
to ask. It is within the power of the president to allow or prohibit
the mistreatment and persecution of his deputy. That was the closest, I think, it came to a direct accusation targeted at the president. When we went to Kirinyaga the other last Saturday but one, I think that was the first direct response to the president on the succession race, August 9th, 2022. When he openly stated that on account of who the president prefers to be his successor, he will not agree with him on the project tag of Raila Odinga. And so you can clearly tell where this is headed to. When you hear Musalia, for example, in that same rally say, President Uhuru Kenyatta is the patron of the project. And the project becomes a discussion in the Kenya Kwanza rallies. It's not so much about Raila Odinga, it's so much about the president, because that's where the tag is. And actually the president responded to the project tag. And here is what he said in Mombasa.
tuamini na tuombe. Kwa jina la Mwenyezi Mungu, tuongoze njia iliyonyoka, njia ya watu wema, wale uliowakasirikia. Mwenyezi Mungu, tumesimama mbele yako, maarifa ya kutuongoza na kutii, kuomba uwabariki viongozi wengine ambao kwamba wako hapa.
Lord our God, the Father and source of all goodness, healing the sick, restoring hope to the broken-hearted, and preaching the good news of liberation to come. And therefore it is your will that all
mbalimbali waliotunukiwa nyadhifa za uongozi.
Hii ni marathon. Hii ni marathon. Ukiona mtu akisema mimi sina project ya mtu mimi, lakini nitaangalia hata mimi kura yangu si nitaweka pahali ya mtu mimi nitaamini. Na kama kuna mtu mmoja ama wawili watanisikiza, si nitawaambia mimi oni langu ni hivi. Si ni namna hiyo? Ngoja mosmos. Waja. Haja kubwa tuungane.
And you could tell how animated he was. That shows you that he probably was stung by the repeated project discussion and him becoming part of that discussion. So once again, I think the gloves are out, no holding back, and this could be the situation until the end of this race.
And Linus, we're about to take a break. I don't know if one wants to come in. It reminded me actually of the Nigeria case that you mentioned, Linus, where Obasanjo, the retiring president at the time, Olusegun Obasanjo, of course, on his second return, this time as a civilian leader, he was leaving, and here was the vice president, Atiku Abubakar, who was moneyed and quite popular. I mean, he had a lot of grassroots support, but then Obasanjo decided that he was not going to support him, owing to those differences they had. And Umaru Yar'Adua, who was a governor in one of the northern states, actually looked quite colorless and all kinds of things. I mean, he wasn't the kind of person that most Nigerians were expecting to become president. And Obasanjo insisted on him and got quite involved. And the PDP produced the president in the name of Musa Umaru Yar'Adua. So presidents can be quite involved in their own succession, not necessarily something that everybody will agree with, but around the world you find places where this happens. Yvonne.
Yes, and you know, let's not deny that, you know, a president's vote is one, yes, but his influence is certainly goes well beyond himself as an individual and the decision that he will make at the ballot. And you know, the team on the other side is well aware of this, and that is why you've seen, especially since the formation of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, that there has been a sustained attack on this. I don't know if we have time just to play one quick soundbite where Ruto, Musalia and Weta were telling, you know, were saying Raila is a project, don't pretend. And this has been the message you've seen sustained from the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, telling people that, look, he is a project, that is the person. In fact, even today they said, Musalia said, you know, Raila will be, the president will be holding a remote control, and then, you know, Raila will sort of be dancing to that tune. But let's listen to the three on this.
Don't lie to us. You never supported Kitendawili when he was in a position to run the affairs of the country. Now that it is obvious that he can't run the affairs of Kenya, how do you pretend that you want to support him? Unless you are using him as a puppet so that you can rule and you can continue to manage and you can continue to decide the issues of Kenya.
Sisi tunataka president ambaye atakuwa kiwa controlled kwa mlango ya nyuma, ama tunataka president ambao sisi wenyewe tumechagua, yule ambaye atatoa uamuzi na sera ambazo zinaeleweka.
Usitoke kwa urais, ushuke chini hapa kwetu kwa siasa. Wewe kaa kama rais wa Kenya, rais wetu. Kwa sababu hapa chini hawa wananchi watakuaibisha mheshimiwa rais.
Na tunataka kumshauri Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, uliza sisi tuliobeba mzigo wa Raila. Huo mzigo ni mzito. Utaubeba, utaanguka nao. Na utaanguka uharibu sifa yako kama rais wa nne wa Kenya. We want you to be peaceful and happy in retirement. Lakini ukitoka mwezi wa 8 umeanguka na Raila kwa matope, hiyo matope haitatoka kwako mpaka mwisho.
So you see where that is going, and it's been happening at just about every rally that we have seen. I know they're going back to Nakuru tomorrow, where they had their first rally, and I'm sure you'll see pretty much more of the same. As we go to a break, I just wanted to add how it seems interesting that the president and his deputy are both clamoring to, get the successes of this government. Nobody wants to talk about and take responsibility for the failures or what didn't work. Isn't it just interesting that, all of them are claiming that without me, we would not have done the good. Without me, we would not have done the good. But nobody willing to say, well, let's be honest, we failed in aspects 1, 2, 3, 4. Yvonne, and there are some of those.
Yvonne, failure is an orphan.
Yep.
Success
is
many
fathers. Correct. Let's
and now
take
the project tag is even on the other side. They're actually turning it around and say, his project, except he's not the president's project. He's the people's project.
Yes.
Interesting.
There you go.
There. But
yes.
Let's take the break because there's much more to discuss on Newsgang right after this break.
Great.